This podcast could potentially have adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly the possibility of sexual content. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, Drinking with Authors fans. We have some pretty big news from your host here, Erica Lance. We are moving to change the format of the show to be one episode. So, there's a few episodes that were recorded the old way that we're doing the new way, and that's what you're listening to. So thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we love having you as fans. On to the show.
Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast. I like saying that as if you didn't know you were listening to a podcast, since it's on a podcast platform that you're listening to it. It's fine. Okay, I am your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today is the amazing, yet rarely seen lately, J.M. Paquette. She's like an elusive creature. And our guest today is the amazing C.K. Westbrook. Welcome.
Woo!
Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking, shall we? So I have in my Drinking with Authors swag, you'll get some of this, CK, for being on the show. I have grapefruit juice, and I put gin instead of vodka in it this time. Not the best choice. Now I know to put vodka. It's fine. It's gin and juice. It's fine. I've done this before, but for some reason, it's not the best choice I could have made. And I have water to hydrate myself because one should have water. JM, what incredibly boring thing are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking tea. I am drinking orange pico tea in my fabulous mug because I'm boring.
Very cool. CK, what are you drinking that's hopefully not as boring as that?
I'm kind of boring. I'm drinking a Pinot Noir. I'm a red wine drinker. And this is from one of my favorite wineries in California. So it's awesome. It's called Etude. And I'm drinking it out of my Alanis Morissette Reasons I Drink mug.
Ooh, I love that. I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh, the amount of times I listened to Jagged Little Pill, I was thinking about that the other day. Mm-hmm. Like I used to have an almost hour commute when that thing came out. And I used to just play that entire album on,
even the secret song at the end.
Yeah. Oh,
it's a fantastic album. She's fantastic. I've seen her recently in concert. She's still got it. She's still got that voice.
I'm going to see the play soon. The musical, Jagged Little Pill. I'm curious.
There's a play?
There's a musical called Jagged Little Pill. I had no idea, but apparently
now I'm writing on a Post-it. This is how it starts. I was telling you.
It was like it was on Broadway, and I think in January it just started moving, right? So it's going out to all these other places.
Yeah, I have season tickets to the Strauss Center here, and it's one of the shows that's included. So I was like, ooh, a lot of more things.
Okay, we're going to talk, JM, because I'm going to need to go to that. I'm going to need to go to that with you. I'm going to have to. Okay, so this is not about Jagged Little Pill, though. This is about C.K. Westbrook. For the audience out there who may not know you, what do you write?
Science fiction. I've written a science fiction series called the Impact series. 2 books have been published, The Shooting, and book 2 is The Collision. And book 3, The Judgment, will be published on March 30th.
Very cool. So this will be released after that. So let's talk a little bit about your journey, though. When did you start doing writing?
I am not a writer. I love to read. But I would write occasionally. I wrote some stories when I was like in college, and I would have these fantastic ideas and I'd sit down and start writing, and then they never came to anything, mostly just because I was really busy, because I never considered myself a writer. I always considered myself a storyteller, because people always tell me I tell like really amazing stories. And I think there's like 3 categories, right? There's author, storyteller, writer. And I thought always I'm a storyteller, not a writer. But during the pandemic, had a little bit extra time, I thought they were really cool ideas, and then I just started writing.
Okay, so you're a pandemic writer. I've decided there's like a cluster of people that are pandemic writers. Like that, they come on the show, they're like, I decided to write in 2020. And I was like, okay, cool. And you have 2 books. So you sat down and you started to write. At what point did you go, I'm going to try to get this published? Because sitting down and writing is very different than I'm going to actually try to do something with this work?
Right. A few years ago, I wrote another book, and it was an environmental book. It was more like about work. And I, did research on getting agents. I did research on self-publishing and publishing. So I had done a lot of that. And I realized how hard it was, of course. And I was like, oh, it's so difficult and extremely complicated if you don't know what you're doing. So I didn't, with these, when I sat down with this to write the shooting, I was like, I'll try it again. Who knows how long the pandemic's going to last. I can see if any agents are interested. I can see. And when I started writing it, what I realized it was becoming a series, which was like really weird because I was like one book done, cook the next one. And it was just this bizarre, like coming together. And I have a friend, and this is DC. I know a lot of people that write, but most of them write nonfiction and very like serious things. So, but she kind of pushed me in the direction and helped me find fiction avenues. And then her friend found me like the publishing. So I'm like, I just feel like I kind of stumbled into a fantastic thing. So, it was so fast. Like I literally sat down and started writing the shooting. I want to say like the lockdown started in March, right? So by like April or May, I was kind of bored and I was like writing. And then like a year later or 2 years later, one of them had published, and it's just been really fast. Crazy fast.
And that's cool because that's the exception generally and not the rule to writing, right?
Absolutely.
So you started to go on this journey. You're getting your books published. You find a publisher that does series-based. It's Four Horsemen, whatever. I'm going to just throw that out there. And but what made you decide, wait, I can continue this? Because it's one thing to go from one book to maybe 2 or 3. But what was the change for you to make that happen?
Well, the shooting, breaking apart the shooting and the collision into 2 was like, I don't know, weirdly natural. And I was like, yeah. And then I'm like, oh, here's a third one. And then we're going to wrap it up because that makes sense, right? That series are in 3s, at least to me. I know they're not. I mean, I'm just looking at our collection. There's lots of series which go on for books. And then I was like, and I don't even know if Jen knows this, but I'm like, oh yeah, I did. Like, I was like, I'm going to do another one. And this is like 5 years after the shooting. And then I'm going to do another one. And then like, so the world just got like bigger. And then I'm like, I'm going to back up. I'm going to write another one about this. So I have another idea for another series that's just dying to come out. But I'm going to do this one and then I'll look at that one, but every once in a while I'll start writing about that one. And I'm like, I have to let that one go. Like, I don't want to lose the ideas. I don't want to lose the thoughts and the characters. But yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the world you created, because you're sci-fi, and that's, we talked to a lot of different sci-fi authors, but let's talk about the premise of your book. So we're not giving away everything because everybody needs to buy the book, but let's talk about kind of the premise of the book.
Sure. So when I'm like explaining it to you, I always say science fiction always, I don't know if it's a trope or it's just the way it is, but there's always a catastrophe or catastrophic worldwide event. And it can be a virus or a comet or alien space invasion or Skynet or a mushroom. I don't know if you're watching the HBO show, The Fungus.
You're talking about The Last of Us.
So good. So
it's
something
so good,
happens.
but that is a terrifying premise that it's plant life. I mean, it's one thing viruses, like I feel like we've gotten to a point where, COVID, we saw viruses, but zombie viruses, we go, okay, that's transmitting, you're bitten or everybody has it, you have to die. But then you're like plant life that can talk to each other over miles. And I'm like, no, I don't like
too much, too far.
Even when I go to put a mushroom into my salad, I look at it differently now. Okay, so there's always a catastrophic event, right? So in my series, the catastrophic event is when almost every single gun owner in the world turns their weapon on themselves in a terrifying 15-minute window. Changes everything, right? And then everyone's afraid and there's like crisis, and then a hero rises up and you have to find out what happens. So in a weird way, it's traditional science fiction, right? I mean, that's how most science fiction starts, but it's an unusual. I think the twist is that basically a huge shooting, a worldwide global mass shooting. And that's like makes it more, I don't know, original than some of the other stuff.
But your world is also like very realistic, right? It's our world. It's like, why do that instead of taking this event and putting it in a more traditional, distant future, sci-fi? Why the now?
It's interesting. Like when I was actually doing it, I wasn't even sure why, but then I started watching all these, it's like TikTok. They define it as, what is it? Our world, but. And I had never really heard that as an explanation. The shooting was already done and moving along. And I was like, oh my God, that is exactly what it is. Our world, but for this thing, like this catastrophic event. And I like, everything the pandemic made it work, like the world was in a certain way. The mindset was in a certain way. And having been, I'm middle-aged. So it's like, I just remember 9/11 and remember the 2008 catastrophic economic collapse and like how people reacted and responded within 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days after such an event happens. And it's an interesting thing because it's a shooting. I don't want to go too much into it, but it's like, there's a lot of levels of like, how much does our world change and how much doesn't it? So I didn't even think about it until way after the fact. I'm like, yeah, this is just our world. Because even like when I'm selling the books, like at local events or like holiday fairs, and people are like, oh, it's in DC. And then people are like, yeah, I recognize this or I recognize that. And people love that, right? They love the localness. And a lot of it takes place in Florida. So I feel like, yeah, it's definitely our world. But, right. Yeah, it's very believable. I mean, you have the catastrophe that brings it all together, but just those little believable details. It's like, oh yeah, I was alive. I remember that we were all doing those things. So I think it makes it resonate in a different way.
So the first book gets published for you and you have it in your hand. So first of all, what was that like? Because if you've done another book before, then you already had it in your hot little hands at some point, but was it different having this one?
No, I'm sorry. I never got that one published.
It never got published.
I pitched it to some agents and people were like, oh, you have to pitch it to 100 agents and then you have to do this, you have to do that. I just was learning the process. I never really got anywhere with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, this was totally, that's why I was like, well, it's a very difficult process, but I have some time. So let me try it again, and I was way more excited about the shooting than I was that thing I did a few years ago. So I was like, I think I was more determined, to try to find a way to get it published.
I got it. So then it's published and you actually physically get in your hand your book. What was that like?
Dream come true. I mean, I was just like yelling to my neighbors, dream come true. And then I had this big launch party at my friend's condo and I was just kept saying, dream come true. It's hard to explain, but that's literally what I felt like.
No,
and even with the second one, I was still like, oh my God, the dream is still coming true. So, and I mean, I have another career and I have this other stuff, but this is awesome.
Well, with that, so you get what about reviews? So you had a thing at your friend's party, you've taken this places to sell it. What has it been like? Do you look at your reviews?
Of course. Yeah. I'm sorry. I shouldn't say of course. I'm sure some writers don't.
There are writers that don't, and there are writers that run away on fire from them and want nothing to do with reviews. So
I love looking at the reviews, especially when they're something it's so deep and it has different elements, right? It's gun violence and it's feminism and it's environmental. And it's just interesting to me when I read the reviews to see what people hit on that they say they enjoyed or they liked about it, these are the issues of the day or, so no, I like looking at the reviews. I mean, I wish I got more, but I think every writer wants more reviews, right? So, and whenever anyone says to me, oh, I read it, I really liked it, I'm like, please do a review, so I'm trying to encourage people to do that.
So, what do you do with your reviews as you're reading them? Which ones, has anything shocked you about what people have said about your book? Not in a bad way. When I say shock, I don't mean negative, but sometimes I think as authors, we We have the story. We're telling it. We're doing this. We have this whole thought process about what this book will mean to the world when it gets out there. And then somebody comes up and says something completely like, and you're like, what? Is this a metaphor for what? You know, like, so how has that been for you?
So far, I mean, some of them are like, I enjoyed this book, I'm going to read the next one, or I'm looking forward to the next one, like something simple like that. But the ones that are like more thoughtful are like really, really encouraging. Like, these are the crisis of our day, articulated into one 200-page book, hitting on so many things. And like, I was even reading, I was with my family at Christmas, and I was reading one of the reviews that had just come up to like my sister and brother-in-law. And he was like, that's what your book's about? Because he was like shocked by the review. And I was like, why don't you go read it? And then you could tell me if you agree with the review or not. I don't think he has yet. But it's some of the reviews are just really, really, really nice. I mean, I know I'm going to get bad reviews soon. I know it. Like it's art, right? So subjective. Someone's going to hate it and someone's not going to like it. And that's okay. Because I feel like I've already been kind of cushioned and really protected by so many good reviews. And it's not that many. I know like people get thousands of reviews, but I'm thrilled by it.
No, and you hit on a point, because I actually kind of measure a bit of success of a book by obviously the quantity of reviews. But if you only get positive reviews always, I think that ends up being a little suspect. Mm-hmm. A little like, not that it can't be good. Do not get me wrong. I love the authors that have a lot of 5-star, but we always tell people on this show, like, go look up your favorite popular books, like ones that you think are the greatest book, and you're going to see negative reviews. You just are. And so I feel like it's almost like cresting a wave when you get into the diversity of reviews, right? Obviously, you want to maintain around, sorry, I have Cat Jungle behind me, and the queen who's like, I am going to be involved in this podcast whether you like it or not. But I think you get to a certain point of reviews where you want to maintain that 4-star-ish average, right, and above, which you really have 4 or 5 stars, because they say there's like a 3.5, but there isn't, because you can't put 3.5 stars on Amazon. It's not a thing. So that's like a made up number. But I think having it up there, but I think there's a certain point where there's a volume coming in, and then you have a diversity in the type of reviews. And it's totally okay to get a negative review if it's somebody just it wasn't their thing or whatever. I also tell people, don't effing review the books if it's not your thing, because who gives a shit your opinion if it's not your thing at all. So
I love the romance readers who are like, there's kissing in this book. Like, what? Did you look at the cover? Like, are you shocked by that?
Did you look at the cover of the 2 people kissing on it?
Right, exactly.
Like, that should, pretty it's called Kissing in the Blah.
Yeah.
It should give it away.
Oh, good then. I'm curious because, okay, so you wrote another book, and your background is more research based. So how did you start? Like, did you have just an idea and then you went and did an outline, or did you do research? Like, what was your process for coming up with this?
That's another weird thing. So I live in DC, and I participate in a lot of protests and rallies. I'm an activist. So, and I go to a lot of gun rallies, right? With Marjorie Stoneman Douglas kids and A Million March. And and it has nothing to do with my job. I'm just, want to help stop the gun violence. And every time I go there, I always hear people say, there's too many guns. You're never going to get rid of them. There's too many guns. Might as well get a gun. You got to get a gun to protect yourself, because there's too many guns. We're never going to solve this problem. In the world I work in, we hear this with climate change and the environment. It's destroyed now. It's destroyed now. You might as well do something. And it just, the nihilism and the giving up and the apathy, it just drives me nuts. So here it is, the pandemic, right? I'm drinking 5 o'clock ends, and I can't do my rallies. I'm not going to my protests. I'm not organizing something. I'm not so I have this time. And I said, and all of a sudden it hit me. Oh, I thought of a way to take the power out of guns. And then I sat down and I was like, wow, sometimes the imagination can solve massive problems. And I just thought it was for fun. So I started saying that. And I literally would be I'm not a good typer. And I would be telling the computer, I'm like, slow down, slow down, slow down. My brain would be moving so fast. I couldn't type fast enough. And my husband would be like, why are you talking to someone? I'm like, stop. So I'd be like, shh, So that book, like literally, I feel like it came out in like 2 weeks, or, it's probably like a month, the first draft, which was crap. It needed to be totally edited and then circulate around. And then I sat on it for a while to like digest it. But I feel like it was kind of like the intensity of the darkness of the moment and the, and it just came out really fast. And I was like, I love this story. I really want the story to get told. So I did research. Absolutely. I do research in my job, but the spark for it was purely imagination based off of absolute frustration in the sense that people keep saying we're never going to be able to stop any of these horrible things. And I was like, oh yeah, kind of like Skynet. Oh, that's funny. Because one of my friends, she was like, I'm not going to read this because I have guns and I love guns. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I mean, we're friends and clearly you're, have guns. Do you hate machines? Like you can't watch Terminator, right? Because I'm like, I like machines. But so but guns is different. Guns is a very like sensitive area. And then she finally read it and she liked it because she understood it better.
That is funny how people have a definite reaction. It's very polarizing when you say, oh, it's about gun violence, as opposed to like you read science fiction, you still have, you have a Google in your house. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
It's very true. And it's such a hot topic because I think that also the way, the media is feeding us information. That's how I'm going to say it now, because I don't think we're looking for it. I think it's being walked in the door with various agendas. And this is not a conspiracy theorist me, but literally look at Google's algorithms if you want to see anything.
How you get your information is very specific.
Yes, it's very specific, but I think it's very interesting that this is so polarized as a topic in general to what you just said, Jen. Like, it is amazing because there's only a few things you can touch on. Just saying one thing goes, oh my God, my rights, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's like a match on gasoline,
Absolutely.
People have opinions on things, but generally it's not as violent. That's ironic, isn't it?
Isn't that crazy? Because people are also like, I don't want to read a book about violence. And I'm like, you love murder mystery shows. You like you are like into the deepest, darkest psycho things. You read horror. I can't read horror. I have like an overactive imagination, so I can't sleep at night if I see like a Stephen King movie or something. So I'm like, and I know that ever since I was a kid, just stay away. But I'm like, there's everyone has their own definition about what is violence.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I agree. Okay, guys, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Drinking with Authors.
Hey, listeners, you know me, Erica Lance. You're just listening to me in the podcast that you had. But guess what? I'm doing something new.
Yeah, she's joining me, Mark Muncy, the author of the Erie, Florida book series in Erie, Appalachia. And we are hosting a new podcast called Erie Travels.
Woo-woo! Erie Travels, which covers things like ghosts, cryptids, weird stuff, UFOs, Men in Black, all kinds of fun things that people talk about. And I'm sure you've discussed with friends.
Yep. And you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platform of choice or find us at erietravels.com and join in the fun and all the spooky goodness.
And of course, Mark, what do we always say?
We'll see you on the other side.
We're back. We were solving the world's problems, but now we're back and there's still some alcohol involved, which I appreciate. Okay. So now that you've endeavored down this path and you're a writer, legitimately a writer, because you have books and they're published and that's a thing. So you have the I'm a writer moniker. What's it like now, especially as the pandemic has shifted? It hasn't disappeared, but it's shifted to where more people are going out and stuff. Like we're somewhat getting back to whatever the new normal is of existence, I would say. I'm not ignoring the pandemic, but people go out in public now where there was a time nobody went out, But I have to say this I'm going to just throw this in because it's kind of interesting to your point in your books and what the world was like. I was in Atlanta for a little mini conference, right? That was, and I met a friend down there and there was probably like 50 people at it. But, and we were in Atlanta in September of last year, Jen and myself. And one thing I didn't realize back then, Jeb, but I realize now is if you go down there during the week, it's like a ghost town, downtown Atlanta. Like a lot of these major cities, I think, are more like people.
New York City is like Manhattan. Manhattan is like that. It's bankers hours. If you're there on the weekend or in the late evening and there's no dinner, right? Everything is closed. I was just in LA for a conference. And everything was closed on the weekend. It's definitely a Monday to Friday. Only people who are in offices are there. And it's a ghost town otherwise.
Well, and people weren't really in offices. I was in Manhattan because I went to see, our favorite comedian. Mm-hmm. And I was there for like Thursday and Friday during the day. And there was nobody there. It's very interesting because our new normal has ghost towns of downtown areas and things like that, where if you had written that was going to be the case 5 years ago, everybody would have thought, like, this is poppycock. That's never going to happen, So it just aligns with your book, because the way you wrote your books, it's not, I'm totally gone on a tangent here, but it's an alternate reality that is very close to what could be real versus, you look at Back to the Future and we don't have flying cars or hovering skateboards, which we really should have had by now.
Right.
So
if the pandemic hadn't happened, do you think this would have, would you have had this idea?
I honestly don't know, because it was a mix, I think, of having my brain relax at night. Like I said, I was not overscheduled. So I actually just got to and I have all of these crazy ideas. Like I said, I'm a storyteller. Like I can get drunk at a bar and be entertaining 50 people and they'll remember me 5 years later. I just never had the time to sit and actually put it on paper or on a computer. And so I don't know, and I'm just so happy it did, because like I said, it's environment, it's gun violence, it's bad behavior, it's people being mean to each other. And also that all came out in the pandemic too, right? I thought we were all going to be kinder and we would reevaluate health insurance because we're all in it together. And we would reevaluate, and then we saw how dark it got. And I'm a dark person. I don't like nihilists. I'm full of hope that the world is going to be better. But I will also be the one at the party who's oh, don't eat that fish. It's endangered. It's going to be extinct. The oceans are going to collapse in 2040. We're all going to die and that's my science and my background, work. People are always okay, CK, calm down a second. I'm oh, you're right. Because I just I will go into that dark place. And the books allowed me to go there too, without having to feel like I was taking people down. Because it is I always say, the shooting is dark and scary. Collision is dark and scary. Judgment, just wait and see what happens. It's not all gloom and doom.
But even though it's dark and scary, you have moments of real compassion and humanity. So it is still hopeful. Right? I like that.
So it's real, because we do have moments of compassion and humanity, and you did see many people coming out and trying to do something better when the pandemic was happening. And then you had the people that were denying that it was even happening, which is really interesting. And it's interesting when you go around and get the perspectives from different people in the cities. It was very different in New York, for instance, than it was in many other places, right?
Yeah, and Erica, you were saying, in DC, we have not come back. The city, the government employees are still working from home because they feel safer and they enjoy it now. The commute into the city is a nightmare for people. The metro there's huge issues, which only people in DC really know about. And so when you're downtown, it feels like pre-pandemic Sunday at 2:00 on a Tuesday at 9, and I was in New York City a few times, and it's the same thing. People have not come back. People are living and functioning, but they have not fully come back. And in some ways it's better. I feel quality of life for people to work at home, some people, is better than for them to deal with the commute and the stress. So the world is reevaluating, and DC is not back. It's changing. We're in a massive period of change.
Yeah. And I hope it continues to change. One of the things, because my previous existence, and I've talked about this on the podcast, was as an HR executive, right? And I love that employees, for the first time in a very, very long time, back to Norma Ray kind of thing, went, Yeah, no, we're saying home. Like, it, not everybody got to do it. And I'm not saying, there were some people that employers, blah, blah, blah. But it was really funny. Some of the news stories I would see and some of the executives that I worked with that would say things like, well, look, Goldman Sachs is going back. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. Like, that is not going to happen. You won't hear about it, but they're not going to get all those employees back. That is never going to happen. And enough of them, like, if one person is like, nah, I'm not coming back, it's one thing. But when you have 60% to 80% of people going, no, it's fine, because we still are in an unprecedented unemployment rate, meaning like there are, I think right now, like 9 million or 11 million more jobs than there are people, even if hypothetically everybody came off unemployment and was able to fit in those careers, which I'm not even going to do career assessment, but there's more jobs than we even have people to work the jobs. So it's such an unprecedented time. And I so loved it that entire groups of people went, oh, this is what it's like to have dinner with my kids, or this is what it was like to do yoga classes at lunch, or take my dog out, or whatever is your sanity, and able to go, I'm not going back. Thanks.
It gave people more agency. And I hate to be doom and gloom, but like the Black Plague did the same thing. It killed a third of the population. The remaining peasants were like, no, I'm not going to work for free anymore. You're going to pay me a lot more. So I think for a certain part of society, it definitely helped. Now, of course, if you're in the service industry, you were screwed the entire way, all the way through. It didn't.
Except for yes and no. So I'm going to argue this point because here's something that I've seen that changed. The service industry, especially fast food and stuff, was operating a lot off of minimum wage. Like, you were lucky maybe if you got $10 an hour. It has changed now. It's true with restaurants everywhere that, I'm in a rural part of North Carolina. It's not like a little small town kind of thing. It's a college town. We got every fast food restaurant. People are always surprised how many fast food restaurants, considering, by the way, John, I found out how many people technically live in this town. It's 3,800. Yeah, I know. It's so tiny. But the fast food restaurants up here in this little town in North Carolina are paying $21 an hour. That is unheard of. You didn't see that pre-pandemic, even in the big cities like New York and stuff. People were not making $21 an hour at a McDonald's. The service industry, yes, they had to work through it. And there was a lot of that. And I'm not taking any of that away. But a lot of them went, oh, you want me to come in and do this? Yeah, you're going to have to pay me a lot more to come do this.
Pay me a lot more. So with all of all right, I'm going to pull us back into author mode.
We should, because
sorry, we went up. Well, it's all about the pandemic and everything. But do you think now that we're kind of shifting back, like, are you still able to work from home, or are you going to the office, CK?
I am working from home. Like, I work for a small nonprofit, so we shut our office down because there's no point in affording it. And we have just completely readjusted everything. And we have grassroots people like all across the country. So we had a lot of people doing Zoom and remote working and virtual working beforehand. So it wasn't as shocking to us as it was to the service industry, of course, and the government and any place that was required to be at a certain place. And also, I would say this, in North Carolina, like, I did a book signing in North Carolina, and I was supposed to go to this small little adorable town where I have friends, and they're like, no, you're going to go to Winston-Salem. And I did really well in Winston-Salem. Like, this was like one of my first ones. I think I sold like 20 books, and I was like thrilled. And it was like, but they were like, no. Like, because North Carolina is like so progressive in some places and so very conservative in others. I mean, I'm from Florida, so I totally get that. Like, you can cross a county line and the world will shift. But yeah, and again, because it's about guns, they were just like, the minute you mention guns, there's going to be an opinion. And I was in this too, like, the world shifted for, hospitality management and teachers, but I feel like we're still in this clash of the titans. Like, I feel like the corporations are still trying to crush them. And so I get so excited every time I see a union pop up, because I'm just like, please do the union, because standing on your own doesn't cut it. And I feel like they're still like, oh, we're going to put inflation on top of you, or we're going to put this on top of you. Or they're trying to break the backbone of this empowered I don't want to say just working class, but also middle class. Like teachers deserve more, but people are still upset. Like they're like, I don't want to pay $25. I don't want my burger to increase in price but what you're challenging is corporate profit. And that's where the cracking is. And I don't think we've totally cracked the back of the conventional thinking that shareholders are more important than the employees. So anyway, I'm just saying we're still in this crisis change mode. And I really hope that the workers and the middle class persevere and win.
Me too.
I think it will, because it is, I do get it, and people are upset, but it's so funny because people go, well, the price of eggs. And I go, well, that's because you're paying all the people on the egg production line now, like a living wage to do their job. So, if we had started doing this and increased them incrementally over the last, 30 years, we wouldn't be arguing over $5 eggs because everybody would be used to it. It's just now we're doing like gas pedal and now it's $5 eggs. And people are like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, no, if people can pay their bills now, I will buy $5 eggs. I'm fine with that. I know it can be hard on some people, but I'm hoping that they're adjusting themselves. Look at us getting off on this tangent again, Jen.
Well, what I was trying to pull it back to how does writing fit into your schedule? Did it shift at all? Like, if you were all at home and then you had to start driving back or going to different things, like there are more events happening now. So you're working that back into your schedule. Like how's your writing schedule fitting into life these days?
That's a good question. It's way more stressful because during the pandemic, like I said, I could write for hours and blocks on time. Couldn't go anywhere on Saturday. In DC, it was massive lockdown. I could write page after page after page. And now, it's the after. I keep thinking if I just had like 2 weeks to just sit, I could finish it and get it out the door. It is harder, really, because there's so much more pull on time. And yes, and I'm one of those people that I like to write like in a huge block of time. Like I like to just get in there and just like don't bother me. And I love that, but so it is more difficult. Post-pandemic. I'm not saying I want another pandemic, but again, as someone who works on the endangered species issues, we all know, right, that all viruses, all pandemics come from nature. And going back to your chicken thing, the chickens are right now having a pandemic. And all it's going to take is that bird flu has already jumped to 3 mammals. If it jumps to a human, we are back in a pandemic. So it's absolutely the employee should be paid more. But the abuse of the animal and the non-hygienic and like we are on the brink of another pandemic. This is my friends are like, you're going to go right down to the dark hole again. I'm like, because it sucks knowing what I know, right? Like I literally worked on the Preventing Future Pandemics Act for 3 years. So it's very frustrating to me to just sit here and be like, we're not doing what we need to do. And we might be back in another pandemic really soon. And then I would be able to write all the time.
Silver lining.
I mean, I'm a silver lining. Did you see?
We don't even
silver lining.
Right. I was like, I'm in Florida. We don't have COVID here. Right. You know how you get rid of it is just stop reporting all your numbers. That's just what you do. So.
Yeah.
Oh, what a dirty hole we'll go down with that one. Huh?
I know. All right. Bring it back, Erica.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I tell people, and I'm going to go back to writing because otherwise we could go down this for so long. But there was a show on Netflix, and I don't even know if you can find it anymore, called Pandemic, before the pandemic came out. Mm-hmm. And it was literally talking about the people who go, and you probably know way more about this, so I'm liberal arts, diet coking 1 calorie of information because I watched this, and it was literally the slogan was a gentleman who was talking about going and inspecting some of these animal facilities where animals would get sick, and then they'd have to destroy the population of animals and stuff to try to contain the outbreak of whatever. And the opening line was, it's not a matter of if we will have a pandemic, it's a matter of when. And then this aired, I'm sure it was filmed a couple of years before that, right? Because that's hello timing. And it was 6 months after that, the pandemic hit. And I thought that was so interesting because, again, what we were speaking to earlier, knowledge. knowledge is power. Actually learning things, but nobody wants to do that. That's way too much effort. So
well, at the time I was sharing my office with a person with a master's in public health. So I was teaching and we were in person, and she kept saying, she was like, we're not coming back. You don't really like, when you leave your class on Thursday, tell them that you're not coming back and prepare them to move online. And I was like, no, we'll go away for like 2 weeks or whatever. And then, we're supposed to come. And she was like, no, Jen, we're not coming back.
And just one more thing. They've already killed about 2 million chickens. They are trying to kill as fast as they can to kill this disease. It's happening right now in the United States. They're killing mink. They're killing every bird. That's why it's jumped to wild birds. All it takes is one jump to one human being. And we are literally in that zone, and we're going to be in another lockdown. And also, as an environmentalist, I hate to say this. This is why we get so gloom and doomy. Climate change, we kept saying the diseases were coming. And I work on the Endangered Species Act and wildlife, we have a lack of respect in the world for nature, for animals and plants. They provide us food, air, water, everything. And we just don't respect them. And they are just out there and trying to survive. And that's why I love The Last of Us. I never played the video game, but I'm kind of like, wow, a fungus, it totally makes sense. Something that we so don't respect coming up and bringing us to our knees. It's interesting. Also, I just want to say one thing too about other pandemics. Did you guys ever read The End of Men? It was a science fiction novel that was published literally in 2019. The woman wrote it. I'm blanking on her name. I'll check it in a second. She wrote it and got it published she wrote it in 2017, 2018. And she puts right in the thing. I wrote this book before the pandemic, and it is literally the pandemic. The disease only kills men. It does not kill women. So, I read it last summer. So I already had the shooting was already published, right? And I was getting ready to publish Collision, which was coming out in September. So the next book will be March. So, and I literally had to pull over off the side of the road because I was like, holy shit. Like, how did she see this? And she must have been a doctor. She must have been public health. And I was like, as intrigued in the writer as I was in the story. And I was just like, it just gave me goosebumps. And she said right up there, I wrote this and published it before the pandemic hit. However, I know it's upsetting to people. So, and I was just like, wow, I love the book.
Christina Sweeney Baird.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. She's young. I mean, not that matters, but it's like, she's like a young lawyer in like London, and the start of it is in the UK, and it's just an intrigue, and it's mostly about humans. Like, what happens to humans in a massive crisis where you're watching your sons die and your fathers die and your husbands die, and what do women do? So I thought it was an amazing science fiction book, but again, it was like that catastrophic beginning. And if you read it, I don't know what the ending. It's shocking and not shocking and fascinating.
Well, there's a comic book called The Last Man, right? They made like a show about it too, but that's the premise, is that some kind of virus kills off all the other men and he's weirdly immune, and everybody is like trying to find him and use him and abuse him.
Yeah, because when I was first looking it up, I got confused by that, because I was like, The End of Men was just like, New York Times. It was like, so I was like, oh, I'll try it out. And yes, there are many other premises like that, but I just thought she was a really good writer. She tells a story through like all these different women's opinions of how it happens. It's good.
It's cool.
Hello, Drinking with Authors fans. This is your host, Erica Lance. Because of the change of the format of the show, welcome to the literary briefs portion. Enjoy.
Let's start with, what is your favorite book of all time, CK?
Okay, I try to think about this, and I just need to say that's like asking me, what is my favorite concert, musician, color, animal? Like a million things enter my mind. And I think it's about the period of time and the mood I was in. So it's the most complicated question in the world. I will say Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver, because I love that book so much. And I actually read it a few times, which is one of the few books I've ever read more than once. But it is a difficult and unfair question because there's so many brilliant books.
Well, then what is your least favorite book? Do we have the same thing there, or you can name that one off the top of your head?
That's like the books I've read recently. Again, it's unfair because Poisonwood Bible was the first time I read it was years ago, but it still resonated. Then I read it again before I went to Africa. But like, I feel like I read a couple of books I didn't like that much. I shouldn't say that, right? That's not polite.
You can totally say it. Here's the thing. It's a book that you don't like. Trust me, on this podcast, I've mentioned many books I don't like, some of them repetitively because people bring them up. So you cannot like a book. I mean, that doesn't mean anything because not everybody's going to like every single book.
Okay, I was not wild about Rodham by Curtis Sittenfeld. I just finished that a few weeks ago. I skipped through. I love Hillary Clinton, but I did not like that book that much. And I do love Prep, and I love all her other stuff. And she's big, so I mind saying this is not going to damage her at all. And I would say also The Goldfinch. Everybody loved that book so much. Yeah. Ooh, I did not like. I read it, and the last one, I will say this, was Nikki and the Six. I read it. I thought it was okay. I know there's a movie coming out, and the world loved it. I didn't like it that much. But these are also very strong writers, and they have other books. And my saying this is not going to hurt anybody's feelings, I don't think.
Okay. What is your favorite book to movie?
I should know.
Or TV show. Like you think it went to the big or little screen and they did a good job.
Okay. I've been drinking a little bit, so I'm going to the issues are like, I always like the book more. So going over to the movie, I would say this, Divergent. Like people say, oh, you're like a teenager. Yeah, well, I tried to read the Divergent series and I was not impressed. And I thought the movies were somewhat better, not great. Oh, the book. Oh, are we doing the book is better or the movie is better?
The movie's better.
At this point, the movie's better. I don't even know, though, because you just took me on a journey, and I'm like not even sure where we are anymore.
Sorry. I would also say I read all the Twilight books, and I thought the movies were better. And I feel like the other direction is hard. Like, was the movie better than the book? Like,
was it better? Where do you think they did a good job? Like, I think it's very hard to necessarily do better than the book. There are some cases where there are, and people have mentioned them on the show, and I can't think of any right now, but there are some cases where the movie was probably better than the book. But in most cases, it's, where do you think they did a good job with it? Where do you think they did the book some justice with how they did it?
I would say that one of the ones that blew me out of the water, this is like being a little kid, I read all the Little House on the Prairie books, and I love them. Like, I was a Laura Ingalls Wilder fan, and I know there's issues with it nowadays, but when I was like in elementary school, and then whatever happened, I watched the series, and I was like, what the hell? This is not the books I was just reading. And I loved the series. I loved that interpretation of Laura and all the other stuff, but that was not the books. So I think as a little child, I got the zone where like the books are so different than the movies. So I don't think I get as heartbroken or upset about things, but I feel like there's been some really good adaptations, but mostly the book is way better. Okay. What about if you could be any lead character or any character from your books, who would you be? That's from my books? That's hilarious. Because some of my friends are like, hey, Kate. And they like call me Kate. I'm like, no. She's nothing like me. I am a high-strung type A spaz versing on mean. In other books? Oh, I don't know. Like, what the heck? Like, I feel like, what was the question?
Which character in your book would you be? Which that's hard. You're
super hard. I guess I'd have to be Rex.
Right? That seems.
That was an inappropriate response. I would be like, no, because I just feel like that's too hard. I mean, basically, there's only 4 characters that are really developed. 5 by the end of the series.
Well, it doesn't mean if they're really developed. I mean, the fact is, you could be anybody. You could be the side character of side characters. If you know the backstory, it's your book.
It's going to be Sinclair's. It's his sister in Florida, right?
Oh, she's awesome. Charisma. Yeah. I love her. Okay, I would say Charisma. Thank you, Jen. I am Charisma.
Okay, great. Jen, you're not supposed to be answering the actual questions.
I'm sorry.
Okay, now you get to ask some questions because you got in the way.
I got in the way. All right. Do you finish a book if you're not enjoying it?
I cheat it. Like if I really don't enjoy it, I'll go and read the end and then I'll start reading the book backwards. So that's unfair. And it's a harshness. Like I am committed. I will read anything. But if I'm really bored or I feel like I will go backwards. I did that with Rodham. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to beat up on Curtis Sittenfeld anymore.
Do you read paper books or do you read on your phone, digital? Do you have a preference?
All of it. I do Kindle, I do paperback, I do library, I do Audible, like if I'm driving, like I whatever. I do them all.
If you're reading a paper book, will you like write in it or fold down the pages, or do you are your books like precious and sacred and you can't mar them?
No, it always kills me. At the end of the book, I'm like, oh, I love that line, or I love that sentence. Did I mark it? And I go back and there'll be like folds. I wish I marked up books more. Like I feel like the older I get to, the more I'm like, when I feel like I read something that touches me or it's very intense, I should make a point of acknowledging it more. So, I would mark up a book in a minute, but I am big on sharing books. Me and my friends, we bring over bags of books and we're like, oh my God, these were all awesome. And it might take a year or two to like dig through it. Or you can say, no, that's totally her. That's not going to be for me. But I like sharing books as an environmentalist, right? I'm always like, don't throw them away. Don't like share.
No, I think that if you get done with books, you should take them to local, not like little free reader libraries or local YMCAs or local nursing homes. They love books. Like, do not get rid of your books. But it drives Jen nuts. I like reading my books in like bathtubs and stuff like that. So I always tell people when people have a book and they're like, oh, I'll let you read it. I'm like, I'm just going to let you know the condition that book is going to come back to you in, so you can choose whether or not you're handing it to me, because I don't pretend that it's not going to get spine cracked, like pages folded.
It depends on the book, right? Like there are certain books that are like expensive and pretty and you're like, okay, that one you don't read in the tub. But then other books, it's like, no, just mark all over that thing. That's why I have 75 copies of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's true.
I had a question. It was art. It was about art. What's your favorite like art piece of art?
Wow, that is so hard. It's crazy too, because my little sister is you mean like painting or like other forms of art besides?
Yeah, whatever. Art.
Huh.
What pleases your eye? We'll go with visual.
So difficult. And it's because this is crazy. Like my little sister is an artist. Like and my older sister is an artist in her own way. And I always said, I'm not an artist. I am a science. I am not an artist. And then when I started writing, I'm like, oh shit, I am an artist. Writing is just a different form of art. And so, yeah, that's like almost, I feel like I've been like the snotty person at the Louvre saying, oh, whatever, it's a painting, because I was programmed to think I'm not the artist. But actually I love painting and I love murals and I love anything with nature, anything that has wildlife or sunsets or water or, reefs. But I know that might not be considered high art. Like I love, I do love art.
Cool.
That's good. Okay, what is your favorite weird food combination?
Okay, this one you're going to hate. I'm a vegan, and I became vegan during the pandemic. That was the other thing. I was always pescatarian, vegetarian. Then during the pandemic, I learned how to cook as well as write. And now I'm full out vegan. And so the stuff I did in the past, I'm just like, I was a scoundrel. Like I would eat like tuna fish with like Doritos and pickles and smash it all together. That was my favorite food, and also like my favorite hangover food. And now I'm just like, oh, how did I eat that? But my crazy food is, I don't know if that's crazy, because I feel like I was probably not that crazy. And then that's the one thing I miss. I miss tuna fish smashed up with like potatoes and potato chips, and yeah.
Well, I think tuna fish and I've never had tuna fish and potato chips like that. But Doritos, we're totally grossing Jen out. You can tell by the look on her face. It's pretty awesome.
Tuna fish is not my favorite in general. So
that's my favorite junk food. I'm going to eat tuna with something crazy.
What is your favorite casual outfit?
This, my awesome May the Forest Be With You t-shirt.
I like it.
Mixes my love of the environment and my love of Star Wars. Like casual outfit. Oh, I work out a lot. So 90% of the time I'm in running clothes or like something. And I am also a lobbyist. So I wear suits all the time. I hate suits. And now during the pandemic, you only had to be like suited halfway down, which has been so awesome. But now we're back up. We got to go back up to the hill. We got to talk to these people. We have to dress like they dress.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, I think it's interesting. My favorite were the people not paying attention behind them for mirrors and stuff that were wearing like boxer shorts and stuff on the bottom and then suit jackets. One has to be aware of one's environment when one is dressing like that. What's your favorite writing snack? You're vegan. What's your favorite writing snack?
Pistachios would be number 1. Number 2 would be almonds. Number 3 would be peanuts. And then if I'm really having some weird intensity, would be like crackers. Yeah, I know I'm boring. It's basically salt, right? And they're delicious. The pistachios are the greatest thing that nature has ever created.
I'm surprised you didn't say those little seaweed things, little salty seaweed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Again, Jen's not thrilled. I will let you know
we did a potluck and one of them brought in at one point those seaweed and my students went crazy for it. I was like, oh, okay. Seaweed bites are a big hit.
Well, Jen is eating an Uncrustable.
I would be eating an Uncrustable. That is accurate.
Yeah, it is an accurate statement.
Very true.
Jen eats like a middle school person.
I eat, well, unless Remy feeds me, I eat out of a box. What was the last show that you binged?
Oh, totally. The Last of Us. Like literally, I think I watched the last episode last night. I feel like I was slow to the game on it, but it was fantastic. That's on HBO. It's like it was a video game and it's the Fungus Among Us and it's like horrifying and also deep. And I've really enjoyed it.
You mentioned Star Wars. So what's your favorite Star Wars?
1, New Hope. Blew me out of the water when I was 7. I saw it like 100 times. My parents treated movie theaters in the 70s like babysitters. So they would give you like your 50 cents and they would just be like, go, I'll pick you up at 7. And I just watched it over and over and over. The whole series, just like, and then I got mad because I was talking to my sister the other day about this. Like all of our boy cousins had the toys, but we weren't allowed to buy the toys. Like we couldn't afford them, but also it was not, like they had freaking the ships and the characters. And yeah, that one just blew me out of the water.
I like that you said 1. So I'm just going to high five you from a distance because
the first one was 1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I pretend the other ones don't exist. My boyfriend said that to somebody the other day. They brought up something and they're like, he literally interrupted and went, she doesn't acknowledge the existence of those ones, so you should just move along on this question.
They're all fine and
fun. Shut up, Jen. Seriously.
I like all the things.
I know you do. You always like all the things.
Appreciate variety. What are you reading right now?
Again, with the gloom and doom, but I just finished The Underground Railroad like a week ago. And it took a long time because I have so much going on. I only read like a few minutes before I go to bed as like a treat. And by Whitehead, it was super good. And at the same time, I finished a couple of weeks ago, The First Conspiracy, which is about George Washington. I switch back and forth. I read science fiction. The First Conspiracy is not fiction, but it's written like fiction. And then, like I just try to switch all the time because there's so many freaking awesome books. It's like hard. And also like, with the writing and the working and the life, like reading is a little treat. So I try to be careful with what I'm like reading. I actually have another book by somebody that you guys know in my queue up, which I'm going to start this week. And so like, that'll be my little treat as we go forward. But before that, I read The Golem and the Jinni. I know that's been out for like years, but I love that book. I read I jump around a lot on like what I'm reading. But that was all very recent. Oh, also I read The Crawdads, Where the Crawdads Sing. That was probably like 6 months ago now. I enjoyed the book. I saw the movie. The movie, I like the book better.
Okay. I haven't seen the movie.
Have you read the book?
Mm-hmm.
I listened to the book, and the person who does the narration on the book is pretty amazing. Like, I have to say, the narrator totally brings, I don't think I could have read the book, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like, because of getting into so much detail about the environment and the creatures and stuff like that, takes me way flashbacky to The Plains of Passage, which I fucking hate that book because all it was about grass.
It was in different kinds of grass and how it affected the cultures around it.
Fucking grass.
I learned how to nap steel from those books. Like I could make an arrowhead.
Okay, you know what? You also think
not steel, stone napping. I just said the wrong word. Damn it, Cody. Yeah.
And you're not even drinking.
I
but
know.
Needless to say, I love the Clan of the Cave Bear where Wild Horses, what was that? Where
the Valley of the Horses?
Valley of the Horses. Yeah. Fucking Plains of Passage that book was like this huge. It was like an encyclopedia of fucking grass. But I feel very much Where the Crawdads Sing would have got me down that path had I not been listening to it in the way she told the story, which I think is very interesting because I think some books, and this is just me personally, because now I have more time to do audiobooks than I do physical books because I use them when I'm driving or doing chores or because you can't read while you're driving because apparently that's illegal, whatever. Or chores. So, but I think it does make a difference on some stories, at least for me, to listen to the audiobook versus, the physical. And then sometimes I start listening to the audiobook and I'm like, this narrator fucking sucks. I can't even listen to this story. Their voice drives me crazy. As that happens. Okay. Go ahead, Jen. You had a question.
I do. Okay. So what happens if you have an author that you like, and they put out a new book, but they have done or said things that are unpopular? Can you still support their art without supporting the individual?
That is like such a modern question, right? Like it's everywhere. I would just say this too. Like anytime anyone says, do you consider yourself woke? I'm always like, ask them to define woke before you commit or freak out or deny. Like it's just, the world is changing very quickly. I would say, like, I love Bukowski. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him, but he was like a writer, and like all through grad school, I went on these drinking binges and I would just read Bukowski. He was so bad and inappropriate and wrong.
He's in William S. Burroughs category in my brain. Like the two of them are very, and then like Henry Miller's below them, but still like horrible human beings, but fun art.
Yeah. And I'm kind of like, he's dead now. So it's like, I'm not having this crisis of like, will I continue reading his books? But it is like, we just live in this time, like where it's just like crazy. There's a reckoning about people and their choices that they made. And do we celebrate them? Like, that's the thing. It's like, can you just acknowledge their art and what they thought and felt at the time and learn from it? Maybe that's different than celebrating them. Like, I feel like there's this political issues. It's very complicated, but I would say, yes, I have several writers that I have always liked that I worry were bad guys. But Bukowski was like also going through, he was a sexist pig, whatever. I don't know. Don Lemon is a sexist pig. So it's just like, it's just, the world is very complicated. And yeah.
I think there was, we have social media now, which people didn't have back then, newspapers, whatever, newsletters, maybe if they ran into somebody. But I think it's a very interesting topic because, like we have J.K. Rowling, who's one of the biggest, shitheads right now when it comes to trans rights, and I'm personally saying it that way, right? And you go back and you look at what Harry Potter meant, right? In the Harry Potter movies and the Harry Potter stories and what that meant. And you also, like, for me, Ender's Game was one of my favorite books growing up. It was one of the first books I couldn't put down, and I read all the way through, right? And I was 13 or something like that. But Orson Scott Card is, he's a racist, shitty human being, right? And so I go, okay, what do you do with that? Because you have this very pleasant memory attached to this experience, and then you have the human that does this thing that's horribly wrong. And I get, like, it's supporting them to continue to purchase their art or things around their art. Now, in the case of J.K. Rowling, I don't know how much she actually owns Harry Potter anymore, because Universal bought a lot of it. So who knows if she's making money off of that part still, or what the deal is, or, you know, all that stuff. I'm not going to get into that because I have no fucking idea. But I do think it's really interesting. And that happens with actors and all sorts of people that do something, do something.
Can you watch House of Cards? Like, knowing what Kevin Spacey did. So that's something that's, like, proven, right?
I don't know if Kevin Spacey was proven anymore, because I think he won that court case.
Did he? Oh,
yeah, he won the court case. Sorry.
He won one big one, but there's a second one coming up. So, but wait, let me just say too, like, I felt guilty loving Little House on the Prairie books, like, a long time ago, because of her opinion and her family's opinion about Native Americans, which was actually interesting and deep, because, like, it's just complicated, right? Like, do you hate Laura Ingalls Wilder because she was scared? Like, what? Like, we also learned through her, and the TV show was way better. Like, they made things more politically palatable about her family. And I would also add this one about not just Harry Potter, which is a big one, but Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. And I was obsessed with Joss Whedon, and I thought he was a rock star. And then the more you heard about, like, his relationships with Charisma and Dawn and other characters, but I saw them at Comic-Con a couple of years ago, and Charisma and some of the other actresses, and they said, Buffy has become bigger. Buffy is about women empowerment. Buffy is about, it's not just about Joss Whedon being a douchebag. So just love the show, love the comic books, move forward with the character, and don't let Joss Whedon destroy everything for everybody. And I thought that was freaking awesome, because it kind of, like, releases us from, like, Michael Jackson a little bit and J.K. Rowling. Like, if they're not receiving money for what they, like, if it's, like, I don't, it's difficult. Like, I don't want to make them wealthy for the abuse they did, but at the same time, they created amazing things.
No, I agree with you about the Joss Whedon. I read his biography and stuff like that, because I think Buffy was huge about female empowerment, regardless of, and I'm not taking away the behind the scenes stuff and what's been proven and stuff like that, right? But that entire thing changed generations of girls. Like, it just did. It brought a younger female badass to the scene who was the hero and didn't need a boy to save her. Like, it was one of the few that existed at all. You know, it was a big difference. And you go, do you destroy that and the effort and art that other people put into creating that? It's kind of like with the J.K. Rowling, and then we need to actually ask you a couple more questions that are fun. But the J.K. Rowling, what I thought was interesting is they did, what is it, a 20-year look back or something, like anniversary. Mm-hmm. And I watched that, right? And she was not on it. They used tape recorded things, because I believe Universal went, no, yeah, you're not going anywhere near this. Like, I firmly believe that there's a degree of responsibility you have as a celebrity and to be very careful. And I don't want to say regardless of your views, because I don't think people should have the views, for instance, that she has. But you have a responsibility, because you created something that a lot of people have invested themselves into. And then you do this thing over here that takes away, where all of the cast came out and went, we don't support what she's saying, but we put X amount of time of our lives into creating these movies and bringing this entertainment and bringing these characters and stuff like that to you. And you don't want to take away from all the effort that all of these amazing people put into creating this art that this other person had. So it's a very weird, like, where do you go topic, I think. It's hard, you know. And as a fan of Harry Potter, which I very much am a fan of Harry Potter, it's very hard for me because, you know, I probably would junk punch J.K. Rowling if I saw her in person because, like, give me a break, lady. But this other thing. So let's go to funner topics right now. Not that this isn't important and doesn't need to be addressed, but
Cake
Jen,
or
way to
pie?
bring it down.
Cake or pie?
Cake.
Cake.
Ooh, I love cake. I like pie, but I love cake.
What's your favorite flavor of cake?
Vanilla cake with like a fancy icing. And there's so many good vegan bakeries in DC. Like I have to stay away because they're so divine. And like the more like sugary, yeah, I love cake. I just don't think pie is sweet enough generally. Usually it's more healthy, right? It's got like fruit and stuff.
You obviously don't watch the Great British Baking Show because when they do American pies, the first thing they say is how ridiculously sweet the American pies are in relation to the stuff they make over there.
Too much sugar.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite pen? Like, what's your brand of pen, your go-to? What do you write with?
I am the worst on that. I just finish them and then I throw them. And Jeff's always like, my husband's like, you're an environmentalist and you're just burning through these pens. And I'm trying to find ones that are refillable. And I know I'm awful. And I will even say to him, like, here's your favorite pen. And I just destroy them. So, yeah. And I write. When I am in meetings, especially Hill meetings or boring meetings, I write everything down because that's the only way to keep my attention. Because the minute I start typing, I'll start typing a story or something more interesting to me. So writing to me is like a chore, and not a chore, but it keeps me engaged. I write a lot of stuff down. Like even now talking to you guys, I've been writing a bunch of stuff down and I'm like, I just do.
Yeah. Okay. So final question. If you could be any fantastical, actually, I got a better fantastical question for you. I just thought of it. What color would your lightsaber be?
I'm torn between green and blue. I'm torn between the earth and the oceans. So I'm going to go with green.
Okay. Do you see that, Jen? Pulled that one right out. Okay.
I like it.
Thank you. Shameless self-promotion time, CK. Where can people find you in your books?
www.ckwestbrook.com. Join my newsletter. You can see where I'm coming. I'm going to be doing 2 book signings in Florida. I'm going to be at AwesomeCom in DC. I just want people to come out and talk to me. And I also have like Instagram, and that's all ckwestbrook.author. But the most important thing is the newsletter. Please join my newsletter. It's freaking awesome. You want to see some fantastic pictures and funny jokes and the latest news.
Okay. Yay. Thank you so much for being on this podcast with us.
Thank you. This has been awesome. So much fun. I love this podcast.
Thank you.
And I'm a little bit drunk. I am literally a little bit drunk. Thank you.
That's okay. Me too. That's what this podcast is about. Not Jen, though. She's our designated podcaster. So,
drink all my tea.
Guys, this has been Drinking with Authors, the Literary Briefs edition. I have been your host, Erica Lance. My co-host today has been J.M. Paquette. Do not forget to like, subscribe, leave us a review, comments. We'd love to hear from you. Our guest has been C.K. Westbrook, and we will see you next time.
Ooh.